Hey guys, I'm Sam, coming to you live from my teenage bedroom in Oklahoma. And I've been celebrating the holidays with my family. But with the new year coming up, I want to talk about some of the best and worst books that I read in 2023. I read 100 books this year, so a video talking about all of them would be way too long. So I'm gonna go through some of the worst, best, and most just okay books that I read throughout the year. I do talk about a lot of my favorite books that I read this year in other videos. So for this one, I'm specifically focusing on favorite books that I haven't already talked about. Like, for example, my favorite book I read this year was Dark Air, which I did a 30-minute video talking about. So we're gonna skip Dark Air for this one and go to videos that I haven't already talked about for 30 minutes online. And I also wanna go over some of the worst books, which the book that I hated the most this year was one I didn't even finish because it made me so angry, and that was The Alchemy of Moonlight by David Ferraro. So if you want to hear me rant about why I hated that book so much, I have a video where you can check that out. So now that we've covered the number one worst and best spots, let's talk about the books I haven't covered. So the nice runner-up for worst book that I read this year was A Curse So Dark and Lonely. This is a really popular series that I just did not like. I wanted to read it because it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which even though we see Beauty and the Beast retellings all the time, I'm always here for it. I wanted to read about the main character because the main character, Harper, has cerebral palsy, and that's not something that you see represented a lot. I have a disability myself, so I like to read about disabled main characters. And I feel like the way that Harper was written was pretty good as far as like representation of her disability without making it like her whole thing, you know? Like it's a part of her life that she has to deal with, but it isn't all she is. Like I think the aspect of how that was written seemed to be done really well. But that's the only thing that I liked about the book. You know, in order to do a Beauty and the Beast retelling, you have to have your beast. And so the prince slash beast character just did not work for me. I didn't like him as a human. As a human, I thought he was just bland, boring, and lame. Also, like, kind of a pussy, you know? So that was my take on him. Then as a beast, he's even worse because when he turns into a beast, he loses all sense of like self or humanity and just goes around killing everyone. So this dude has killed a lot of people. And we're still just like, oh, what are we gonna do? Find another girl to fall in love with to break this curse. I'm like, I just don't feel like we're treating this as seriously as we should, because he literally, when he turned into a beast, he killed all his family, everyone who worked for him, all of the villagers in the town. It's just like, whoa, okay, the stakes are actually really high here, and I don't think we're treating this as seriously as we should. Also, I don't know, sort of the way he looked at Harper, like the, oh, she's not like other girls, the, I don't know, the little assistant bodyguard character who was sort of set up as maybe someone who might be a love triangle. I don't know. I just really didn't like the other characters or how the story was told or really any of it other than that there was some disability representation that seemed well done. That was the only thing I liked about it. So next I want to talk about Heartless Prince by Lee Dragoon. I didn't like this. I didn't like it at all. I really didn't like the art style or the quality of the writing, um, which those are the two big ones. It's basically about this orphaned princess named Evany who gets like sort of taken in by this other royal family, and the prince from that family um gets his heart stolen by an evil witch, and so she has to go like retrieve his heart and save him. And I don't know, like it was marketed as something that would be good for fans of Nimona and the Amulet graphic novel series, which I enjoyed all of those. But it just was not giving any of that. It was not working for me. Nothing was coming together really. Everything just fell flat. Even though like a guy losing his heart, you know, and needing it to be returned to him so he can like survive, is pretty high stakes. Just the way it was written fell so flat for me, where I just really didn't care about the characters or the characters, or I just really didn't care about the characters or what was happening or really any of it. And then it's not much of a spoiler, but the ending is kind of like it ends like it's setting you up for another book, like the next book in the series. And instead of being like, ooh, what's gonna happen next? I was like, oh my God, I have no interest in finding out. So very sorry to this book. It really wasn't horrible, even though it sounds like I thought it was horrible. It wasn't horrible. It just wasn't good. So the last book in my worst books of the year category is Blackwater. This is a graphic novel about, you got like your nerd, and then you got your like closeted gay jock. And I mean, there were a lot of things about it that worked. I love a gay romance. I love some kind of like fun, spooky horror elements, a little bit of mystery. So it had that kind of going on. But there were some big problems with this book, particularly when it comes to treatment of people with disabilities, where there were some big no-nos in here. So for one thing, the love interest character ends up temporarily in a wheelchair and is bullied and pulled out of his wheelchair by the best friend of the main character. And the main character just kind of stands there and is like, what can I do, you know? And that I didn't like. And then even worse, listen, I'm spoiling these things, but you need to have them spoiled. Because then later, as revenge against the main character, the love interest steals his inhaler before his track meet. And then the main character has a horrible asthma attack. And I'm like, we're supposed to want these people to be together? And they do have very sweet moments, and there are like a lot of great moments in the story aside from that. But those are two really big things that I'm like, hey, I can't just overlook that. Like, you can't steal somebody's inhaler. And then also to just stand by while your friend bullies someone for having a disability. Hey, let's not do that. So yeah, that just like those specific scenes really did not work for me in this book. I think if those weren't there, it would have been a great story. I really probably would have liked it a lot. But you know, you can't just ignore that and then move on. So those were big problems for me about that book. Otherwise, it's a pretty good story. I ended up rating it like 3 stars on Goodreads because it was more of like a 2.5 for me. But I really genuinely would have liked all of the fun, like, you know, gay horror mystery stuff if it hadn't been for the, ableism. Yeah. So now I'm going to move on to some very middle of the road books, the most just okay books that I read this year. And to start off, I'm going to talk about A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. For me, yeah, this book was just okay, but I also just expected it to be okay. Did I only pick it up because the Elf King looks super goth and fruity? Yeah. Okay, he's giving Sarsian from Dark Air meets Lee Pace in the Hobbit movies. So I wanted to know what was going on there. I'm a simple woman with simple tastes. That's what I like. So I picked up the book, and for me, what it is it's fantasy Hallmark. You know what I mean? It's a classic. It's part of the Married to Magic series that Elise Kova does, where, you have the same forced marriage trope in every single one. But with this one, the main character, Luella, has this sort of like magic power that makes her marriage to the Elf King necessary for, like, I don't know, saving people. it's fine, you know? And when I say that it's Hallmark for fantasy, it's like, you know, when you watch a Hallmark movie, you're expecting kind of a cheesy, just okay romance, maybe even a bad romance. My parents watch a lot of Hallmark movies, and some of them are god awful. But you know, like your standard, just okay Hallmark movie, you're not expecting like an Oscar winner here. So that was kind of this book for me. It was exactly what I expected it to be, so I enjoyed it and I had a good time reading it, and the romance was cute. It was fine. And I would recommend it because it was a quick read. I mean, it took me like 2 seconds to read that book. So it's like a quick, easy read, and you know, it's the stakes aren't too high. It's very just like chill, kind of like it's Hallmark, but for fantasy. So if you like Hallmark movies, then read A Deal with the Elf King. Next, I want to talk about Daughter of the Moon Goddess. This book was also just okay for me because the story itself is really cool. Like, it's based on Chinese mythology. And you know, the main character, she's the daughter of the moon goddess. Her mother has sort of been like put on house arrest by like the celestial king and queen. And so she's basically just trying to like free her mother, kind of. And that's sort of like the journey that she's going on. And I think for me, the big problem with, even though the story is really well written and kind of beautifully told, there's a lot of, I mean, the writing is great. My only problem was that the main character was such a like typical Mary Sue kind of character. All of the men in this book were in love with her. Hey, if he's a hot guy or a prince, he wants her desperately. She's not like other girls. There's something about her. You know, it just got a little old for me where I'm like, okay, we get it. Everybody's in love with her. We get it, you know? And yeah, it was just, yeah, she's immediately very good at everything, just sort of like a natural at everything she does. It's like, I've just seen this character so many times. It goes through all of the tropes that you see over and over again. So that part was very like played out and boring for me. Even though the world building and the story itself is really cool, I just was so over watching every single man that this woman runs into fall in love with her for like no reason. For the last book in my just okay list, I want to talk about Scattered Showers by Rainbow Rowell. Reason why this book is so in the middle of the road for me is because it's a short story collection. And so within all the different short stories, they range in quality as to how good they are, basically. So you had some short stories in here, like the Simon Snow short story that I absolutely loved and am obsessed with. Then you have some short stories that just really didn't work, that either didn't make sense or were just boring or just didn't make sense and were boring. So you had a really mix of like incredible stories and not great stories, terrible stories, just okay stories, you know, so because every short story completely was in a different range as to how good it was, it makes it hard to like rate the book as a collection because they weren't all the same quality to me. Some of them absolutely loved, some of them, no, I didn't like them. But the ones that are really good make this book worth reading. It's worth reading all of them for the ones that are good because they are so good. But also you could just kind of go through and skip to the really good ones and maybe skip over a couple. So now I'm going to move on to talking about the best books I read this year that I haven't already talked about. First, I want to talk about By Pain of Death by Suzanne Clay. This book is really typically just okay for a lot of people, but I loved it because I was literally the exact target audience for it. I mean, going back to talking about disabilities in books, I have chronic pain. And this is a story about, it's like a retelling of the Hades and Persephone story where Hades has chronic pain. Being a person with chronic pain and reading about a person with chronic pain finding love, hey, you got me. you got me. And also just like, you know, seeing the way his love interest kind of like is there for him with his chronic pain. It's just good, man. Like, I think when you are a person who suffers with chronic pain every day and you're actually like seeing that representation written, it is something that you like cling to, or at least I did, because having chronic pain sucks. Hey, having chronic pain, it sucks, guys. It sucks. So I definitely loved reading a romance about somebody like me suffering from chronic pain and finding love and having like a happily ever after. It's just like a quick little short story, very short and sweet. And yeah, it was written for me specifically. For me specifically. So of course I liked it. Next, I want to talk about Sleepless. This is a graphic novel duology about a princess who has this bodyguard who's literally a sleepless knight. Like, he just straight up doesn't sleep. And the princess's father has died, and now she's kind of like, her uncle's the king, and then there's this conspiracy where like people are trying to kill her, and really the only person that she knows for sure she can trust is her sleepless knight, who's very loyal to her. And hey, you know, he's got long dark hair and giant bags under his eyes. So yeah, I was attracted to him. I don't know what to tell you. But it's a really great story, and the romance is really nice, and it's just very well told. It's only 2 volumes, but it wraps up the whole story so perfectly, and I would recommend this to literally anyone and everyone. Okay, so the last and absolute best book that I want to talk about is Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. Behold what is coming, bitch. Behold what is coming. This book is so good. And I honestly don't even know how to describe it because so much happens. I'm just gonna read what it says on Goodreads because I don't even know how to describe this book. Okay, Tarisai has always longed for the warmth of a family. She was raised in complete isolation by a mysterious, often absent mother known as the Lady. The Lady sends her to the capital of the global empire of Eretzar to compete with other children to be chosen as one of the Crown Prince's Council of 11. That's where we're starting off, okay? That's the premise. If she's picked, she will join the other council members through the Ray, a bond deeper than blood. That closeness is irresistible to Tarisai, who has always wanted to belong somewhere. But the Lady has other ideas, including a magical wish that Tarisai is compelled to obey. Kill the Crown Prince once she gains his trust. Tarisai won't stand by and become someone's pawn, but is she strong enough to choose a different path? Here's the thing about this. You become invested in Tarisai immediately. And then once she goes to like the council tryouts, you become invested in all the other characters and their relationships and their friendships, and they're all children, and you don't want anything bad to happen to these children ever. But you know that Tarisai is basically cursed by her mother's wish to kill the Crown Prince once she gains his trust. And hey, that's her little buddy. That's her bestie, and you don't want to see him die, and you definitely don't want to see her have to kill him. It took me forever to read this book because the stakes are so high, and I was so worried about these children and not wanting to see anything bad ever happen to them ever, that it took me so long to get through it because I was just like, oh my God, oh my God. But once the story really takes off, you can't put it down. Like, you cannot put it down. It's so good. And the themes that Jordan Ifueko is covering in this story. I mean, she is not playing around, okay? She does an absolutely masterful job of conveying all the messages that she wants to convey through this book, and sets you up for a great sequel in The Redemptor. This is a duology. I haven't even read Redemptor yet, but I'm excited because I know it is going to be incredible. If it's even a fraction of as good as the first book was, then I'm going to absolutely love it. Raybearer, oh my God. I feel like I don't know. I feel like one of those people who like just discovered The Office. I'm like, have you guys seen this show The Office? That's so funny. Like, have you guys read Raybearer? Because this book has been out for a while, but I just discovered it and it's been so exciting to read and I really love it. And I would say that is one of my best books that I read this year. It is a new top favorite book. And it's one that I haven't already talked about in one of my millions of other videos. So those are my best, worst, and most just okay books of 2023. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm gonna be coming at you in the new year with all kinds of more book videos. So thank you to everyone who has been watching, liking, and subscribing and commenting. I really appreciate you guys. And be sure to check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much. Bye.